Amelia, after 15 years with Innovatech, we're restructuring your position, Williamiah Hayes announced, her voice laced with a thin veneer of corporate sympathy. Across from me, she perched stiffly in her chair, flanked by Laura from HR, both exuding the well-rehearsed regret of those who had delivered this speech too many times before. The company is moving in a new direction, Laura chimed in, pushing a manila folder toward me with the kind of practiced detachment that suggested she had done this dozens of times. Your contributions have been invaluable, but we're consolidating the research division under product development. I took the folder without so much as glancing at it. Inside, I already knew, were the standard severance terms. 2 weeks of pay per year served, 3 months of continued health benefits, and a generic list of career transition services I had no intention of using. I completely understand, I said, keeping my tone calm, controlled. A flicker of relief crossed their faces. They had expected resistance, tears, anger, desperate bargaining. But I was a 55-year-old woman in an industry that worshipped youth, and I had known this moment was coming the second a misrouted email landed in my inbox last month. We'd like you to clean out your desk by Friday, Williamiah continued, emboldened by my apparent compliance. Your key card, company laptop, and phone will need to be turned in before you leave. Your team will be notified this afternoon. My team. 6 of the brightest engineers I had recruited, trained, and mentored, professionals who had helped me design the very algorithm that now powered Innovatech's most profitable product, quantum books. The same algorithm CEO William Sloan had taken credit for at last year's Tech Summit, dismissing my role with the phrase one of our research team members. Of course, I replied smoothly, rising to my feet. Anything else? They exchanged brief, puzzled glances thrown off by my composure. Williamiah hesitated, then nodded briskly. That's all for now. Thank you for making this professional. As I walked back to my office, I passed the executive boardroom, a glass-walled fishbowl where William Sloan stood before a PowerPoint presentation titled Q3 Revenue Projections. He gestured animatedly, likely discussing my work as if it were his. I barely spared him a glance. Instead, I closed my office door, pulled out my personal phone, and sent a single text. It's happening. Friday is my last day. The response was immediate. Perfect timing. Contracts are ready. Dinner tonight to finalize. I allowed myself a small, satisfied smile. It was Wednesday. Friday, I would walk out of Innovatech for the last time, and by Monday, Innovatech would have no idea what had hit them. That evening, I met Nathan Parker at Meridian, a discreet, upscale restaurant well outside Innovatech's usual orbit. As the CEO of Vertex Systems, Innovatech's fiercest competitor, Nathan understood the need for discretion. Our table was tucked in a private alcove, hidden behind elegant Japanese screens, ensuring our conversation remained our own. So they actually did it, Nathan said, shaking his head as he set down his menu. I knew it was coming, but cutting the person who built their core technology? That's beyond reckless. I took a sip of water, unbothered. William never truly understood what I created. He saw the user interface, the marketing angles, the revenue potential, but the architecture, the actual foundation of quantum books, that was just tech stuff to him. The irony was delicious. 3 months ago, I had stumbled across an oversight so glaring it was almost laughable. Innovatech's legal team had never filed the patent for my distributed processing algorithm. When I had inquired, they had brushed it off, assuring me it would be handled immediately. They hadn't. I had. But their reassurance had felt too polished, too dismissive, prompting me to dig deeper into Innovatech's internal documentation. That's when I found it. A strategy memo outlining their exact plan. Strip my name from the algorithm's development, claim it as proprietary company technology, and file the patent after forcing me out. They were banking on the assumption that intellectual property created under my tenure belonged to them. What they hadn't counted on was that I had already anticipated their betrayal. For months, I had been refining the algorithm on my own time, working late nights on my personal hardware, meticulously logging each step with timestamps and development notes. The improvements weren't minor. They increased processing efficiency by a staggering 43%, a breakthrough that pushed the technology far beyond its original capabilities. And because every enhancement had been developed outside of company hours, Innovatech had no legal claim to it. Last month, I had quietly filed for a patent under my own name, securing it with airtight documentation. Thanks to Greg's introduction to a top-tier intellectual property attorney, the approval had come through faster than I'd expected. Now, sitting across from Greg at Meridian, I watched as he slid a folder toward me. "Everything's finalized," he said, his voice calm but brimming with satisfaction. "As soon as you sign, Vertex Systems secures exclusive licensing rights to your patent, and on Monday morning the press release goes live, announcing you as our new Chief Innovation Officer." I took my time flipping through the documents, though I had already memorized the details. A 7-figure signing bonus, a generous equity stake in Vertex Systems, ongoing royalties for any product built using my algorithm. It was more than just a career move. It was a master stroke. Greg leaned back in his chair, smirking. "What do you think William's reaction will be when he realizes what's happened?" I exhaled, setting the folder down. "I'm less concerned about him and more about my team," I admitted. "They don't deserve to be caught in the fallout." Greg nodded. "Already handled. We have positions lined up for all 6 of them. Senior roles, substantial raises. If they want out, they've got a place." That was all I needed to hear. Without hesitation, I signed the last page, closing the folder with finality. In one decisive move, I had secured my future, protected my team, and ensured that my work, would never be stolen again. Greg raised his glass. "To new beginnings." I clinked mine against his. "And to finally owning what's mine." Thursday and Friday blurred into a routine of exit interviews, transition meetings, and quiet goodbyes. The office hummed with the low murmur of speculation, whispers of why her, and what happens now. Some colleagues avoided eye contact, unsure how to address what they knew was an unfair move. Others sought me out in the halls, offering condolences in the form of sympathetic glances and hushed words of support. A few junior developers awkwardly asked if I could endorse them on LinkedIn before I left. I assured them I would. I documented everything: project files, access logs, every process I had refined over the years. Not as a favor to the company, but as evidence, proof that I had left things in order while Innovatech had acted in bad faith. By Friday afternoon, my final exit interview played out like a scripted routine. Laura from HR read through the checklist with practiced indifference, sliding a non-disclosure agreement across the table. "You understand that any intellectual property developed during your employment remains the property of Innovatech?" I offered a polite smile. "Of course. Anything developed within the scope of my employment, using company resources during company time." I let the words hang in the air, each qualifier weighted with meaning. But Laura was too focused on checking boxes to notice. She moved on. "And you confirm that you have no copies of proprietary company information?" I met her gaze evenly. "I have taken nothing that belongs to Innovatech. And I hadn't. The patent, after all, was legally mine. As I packed up my desk, framed photos, a collection of conference badges spanning 15 years, and the coffee mug my team had gifted me last Christmas, Williamaya appeared in my doorway, arms folded, her attempt at casual indifference betrayed by the sharp glint in her eyes. "I just wanted to make sure everything is in order for your departure," Williamia said, leaning against the door frame, watching as I placed the last few items into my cardboard box. Her tone was smooth, professional, but the glint in her eyes betrayed the satisfaction she was trying to mask. "Crystal clear," I replied, wrapping the small glass award I'd received years ago for developing the very algorithm that was now at the center of my plans. The irony wasn't lost on me. Carefully, I nestled it between layers of tissue paper. "You know, Amelia, these restructuring decisions are never personal," she continued, her voice laced with condescension. "William believes the company needs to move in a more youthful direction." I looked up, meeting her gaze with steady composure. "I understand completely. Business is business." Something in my tone made her falter. A flicker of uncertainty crossed her face, but she quickly masked it. What threat could a soon-to-be unemployed 55-year-old woman possibly pose? "So, will you be taking some time off?" she asked, feigning polite curiosity. "Actually, I already have something lined up," I replied, sliding my laptop into my bag. "I start Monday." Her eyebrows lifted, surprise breaking through her detached expression. "That's fast. Anything interesting?" I smiled. "Very. A leadership position. I'm quite excited about it." She nodded absently, already mentally moving on, likely filing me away as a footnote in Innovatech's history. Well, good luck with that. I didn't bother responding. Instead, I walked past her and out of Innovatech's glass-walled headquarters, stepping into the crisp evening air. Before leaving, I turned for one last look at the building where I'd spent 15 years of my career. On the top floor, the executive conference room glowed brightly, filled with people who assumed they had neatly disposed of me. What they didn't realize was that in less than 72 hours, that same room would be in full-blown crisis mode. Monday morning arrived crisp and clear. I dressed deliberately, slipping into the charcoal suit I had bought specifically for this day. At precisely 7:30 a.m., a Vertex Systems town car pulled up to my doorstep, right on time to take me to my new office. "The press release went live at 7 a.m., Greg informed me, as I stepped into my sleek, glass-enclosed corner office overlooking the city skyline. "Industry newsletters are already picking it up. We've got the communications team monitoring reactions." The announcement had been meticulously crafted. Vertex Systems acquires exclusive rights to the revolutionary processing algorithm and welcomes its creator, Dr. Amelia Sloan, as Chief Innovation Officer. It detailed my background, solidified my role as the sole inventor of the patented technology, and most importantly, made it crystal clear. Any company currently using the algorithm, including Innovatech, would now need to negotiate licensing agreements with us. At precisely 9:15 a.m., my phone lit up with the first message from my former team at Innovatech. "Complete chaos here. What did you do?" I smirked and typed back, "Check your personal email. All 6 of you have offers waiting." Meanwhile, 8 miles away, the carefully planned Monday morning executive meeting at Innovatech was unraveling in spectacular fashion. According to Marco's steady stream of updates, William had arrived at the office to find the company's general counsel and chief financial officer waiting outside his door, both looking visibly shaken. The announcement had hit their inboxes like a bomb, triggering an immediate panic. By 9:30 a.m., what was supposed to be a routine strategy meeting had transformed into an emergency crisis session. Board members were calling in remotely. Legal teams were scrambling. And somewhere, I imagined William was finally realizing the full weight of his mistake. And I simply leaned back in my chair, took a sip of my coffee, and enjoyed the view. The legal team at Innovatech was in full-blown crisis mode, scrambling to dissect my employment contract and every document remotely tied to my algorithm. "They're pulling every file with your name on it," Marco messaged. "They just wheeled in all the research servers. It's chaos." I smirked, picturing William pacing the executive conference room, barking orders at Williamia and the legal team, demanding damage control. Meanwhile, the stock market was already reacting. Investors loathed uncertainty, and my announcement had sent ripples of panic through Innovatech's shareholders. At 10:45 a.m., an email from William landed in my inbox, practically dripping with desperation. "Amelia, there seems to be a misunderstanding. Please call me at your earliest convenience." Without hesitation, I forwarded it to Vertex Systems' legal department. By noon, the industry was abuzz. Innovatech's stock had tumbled 7%, while Vertex Systems had surged by 12%. 3 leading tech publications had already reached out, eager for interviews on what was being dubbed the biggest shakeup in the accounting software industry in years. Greg strolled into my office as I wrapped up a call. "How are you feeling?" he asked, leaning against the door frame. I exhaled slowly, letting the moment settle in. "Validated," I admitted. 15 years of being overlooked, sidelined, and watching my work credited to others. And now, I gestured to my sleek, glass-walled office. "Now, they have to say my name." My new executive assistant appeared, clipboard in hand. "Dr. Sloan, the development team is ready for you in the main conference room. Also, Innovatech's CEO has called 4 times in the last hour." I smiled. "Let him know I'm in meetings all day. Legal will handle discussions on licensing later this week." As I walked toward my first strategy meeting as Chief Innovation Officer, my phone buzzed again. "Marco, the board just called an emergency session. William looks like he's about to combust. P.S. My team and I accept your offer. When do we start?" I grinned, typing back, "Monday. Welcome home." By Tuesday, the fallout at Innovatech was undeniable. Their flagship product, Quantum Books, ran entirely on my patented algorithm, the algorithm they no longer had rights to. Now they had 2 choices: negotiate with Vertex Systems or attempt to rebuild their entire infrastructure from scratch. Either option would cost them years and millions in lost revenue. At 2 p.m., Marco sent another update. "William just called an all-hands meeting. Looks bad. Word is they're gearing up to sue you." I forwarded the message to our legal team, who responded in minutes. "Let them try. Your documentation is airtight." Meanwhile, I was settling into my new reality. The contrast between Vertex Systems and my former company was staggering. Here, when I spoke in meetings, people actually listened. My ideas weren't hijacked and repackaged under someone else's name. My expertise wasn't dismissed as outdated. "The engineering team is already implementing your efficiency updates," Greg informed me during our afternoon check-in. "Early testing shows a 51% performance boost, better than we projected." I smirked. I had refinements I never shared with Innovatech. Once I realized they planned to push me out, why give them my best work? Greg chuckled. "Their loss, our gain. Speaking of which, we got our first licensing inquiry this morning." He tapped his tablet. "Not from Innovatech yet. They're still in denial. But Dataflow Systems is interested. They don't want to be collateral damage in whatever legal battle's about to erupt. At 3:30 p.m., Marco sent his final message of the day. William's all-hands meeting was a train wreck. He tried to sound confident, promised they'd fight for their proprietary technology. But everyone in that room knew the truth. I leaned back in my chair, staring out at the city skyline. The industry had finally caught up to what I'd known for years. I was never just one of the research team members. I was the reason Innovatech thrived. And now they were about to learn what happened when you underestimated the wrong person. By midweek, the cracks in Innovatech's foundation had widened into full-blown fractures. Employees were quietly updating their LinkedIn profiles. Sensing the inevitable, Williamaya, usually composed in her corporate armor, had turned pale when someone in a company-wide meeting dared to ask if they had, in fact, failed to secure the patent. Marco's message was brief. William shut down the Q&A after that. By Wednesday, the fallout had escalated. 2 of Innovatech's largest clients had reached out to Vertex Systems, worried about the long-term stability of quantum books without the architect of its core algorithm. Our stock climbed another 8%, while Innovatech's continued its nosedive. Then I got the call. It was Laura from HR, the same woman who had handed me my severance package less than a week ago. Her voice was carefully measured, professional, but there was an unmistakable undercurrent of tension. "Amelia," she began, "I'm calling to discuss the, situation with your patent. We believe there may have been a misunderstanding regarding ownership rights." I leaned back in my chair, allowing a small, amused smile to cross my lips. "I don't think there's any misunderstanding at all," I said evenly. "My employment contract is very clear. Intellectual property developed on my own time, with my own resources, belongs to me. The patent documentation backs that up." Laura hesitated. "William was hoping you might be willing to come in and discuss options." I didn't bother suppressing my laugh. "Any discussions will need to go through Vertex Systems' legal team now. I'm sure they'd be happy to schedule a meeting to discuss licensing terms." The silence on the other end was almost satisfying. Finally, Laura exhaled, defeated. "I'll pass that along." That afternoon, I stepped into the boardroom at Vertex Systems, this time at the head of the table, not relegated to a forgotten seat in the back. My presentation outlined the roadmap for integrating my algorithm into our next-generation products. I didn't need to scan the room to gauge the reaction. Greg's approving nod said everything. By Friday, just 1 week after I walked out of Innovatech's doors, the company had descended into full-blown crisis mode. Their stock had plummeted 23% since Monday's opening, and major investors were demanding answers. The media had taken notice, publishing articles with headlines like, "Can Innovatech survive the algorithm crisis?" and how one strategic blunder may cost a tech giant everything. Through my industry contacts, I learned that William had finally admitted the gravity of the situation to his board. They were backed into a corner. Either license my algorithm from Vertex Systems at a price that would slash their margins, or attempt to rebuild quantum books from the ground up without infringing on my patent. "They've already started interviewing for a new dev team," Marco said during our Friday video call. "William is claiming they can replicate the functionality in 6 months. I nearly choked on my coffee. It took me 3 years to build it from scratch, with full knowledge of the system's architecture. They don't have a chance." "Exactly," Marco agreed. "Nobody believes the timeline. And when our team posted our resignation letters all at once, that knowledge drain hit them hard." That afternoon, Innovatech's lawyers finally reached out to Vertex Systems to discuss a licensing agreement. Our legal team, following the strategy we'd mapped out, responded with terms that were technically fair but devastatingly strategic. 3 times the standard licensing fee, plus a public acknowledgement that I was the sole creator of the algorithm. They'll choke on the acknowledgement more than the cost, Greg mused as we reviewed the draft in his office. William's ego won't let him admit he pushed out the one person responsible for their success. I agreed, which means they'll try to rebuild. I leaned forward, eyes gleaming. And every day they waste scrambling is another day we take the lead. By Monday morning, exactly 10 days after my exit, I walked into the first official meeting of my newly assembled innovation team, Marco, and the other 5 engineers who had left Innovatech in protest. The energy in the room was electric as we sketched out the future of our technology. This, Anita, one of my former engineers said, glancing around the table with a grin, is how development meetings are supposed to feel. Marked with an elegant gold seal, I picked it up, running my fingers over the embossed lettering before opening it. Inside was an invitation to an exclusive industry roundtable, one hosted by the very executives who, a year ago, had dismissed me as replaceable. Greg leaned in, catching a glimpse of the sender. "Well, would you look at that?" he mused. "Seems like the same people who pushed you aside are now hoping to sit at your table." I smirked, setting the envelope down. Funny how that works. The past year had been a whirlwind, one of rebuilding, proving my worth, and making sure my contributions were never sidelined again. Innovatech had learned the hard way what happens when a company fails to respect the people who drive its success. Their desperate scramble to recover from the disaster of losing my algorithm had cost them dearly, while Vertex Systems had flourished, expanding beyond even my initial projections. As I lifted my champagne glass, Greg did the same, his expression brimming with pride. "To real leadership," he said. "To innovation," I countered, clinking my glass against his. The success wasn't just about market valuation or industry recognition. It was about something much deeper, knowing my work had impact, that I had reclaimed control of my own legacy. I took a slow sip, letting the moment settle. Then, with a knowing smile, I reached for my pen and slid the invitation aside. I had bigger plans. Inside the envelope was an invitation to keynote the Women in Technology's annual Leadership Summit. The topic, Owning Your Intellectual Value, How Proper Documentation Transformed an Industry. I let out a soft chuckle, running my fingers over the embossed lettering. Greg, leaning against my desk, caught sight of the invitation and smirked. "You know, you've become a legend in boardrooms. Your story, the executive who underestimated her own team until it was too late, it's practically required reading now." I set the invitation down, shaking my head. "It was never about revenge," I said, raising my glass. "It was about setting a precedent. Innovation doesn't happen in the shadows, and the people behind it deserve to be seen." Greg nodded, lifting his own glass. "To real recognition." I clinked my glass against his, letting the weight of the moment settle in. Outside my office windows, the city skyline stretched into the horizon, bathed in the golden hues of the afternoon sun. At 56, I had finally achieved what had once seemed impossible. Not just professional success, but true acknowledgement. My name was no longer buried in footnotes or overshadowed by executives who took credit for my work. It was now a permanent fixture in the industry, attached to the algorithm that had reshaped the market, exactly where it had always belonged,